what type of regimes are likely to emerge from what we're seeing in the Middle East today, the Arab Springs? Particularly, can we expect regimes on the Turkish model, the Iranian model, some other model, the Taliban model, or are these examples simply relevant?
It's 50-50. It's a very difficult, it's very good, but very, very difficult question. I think, as I said, nobody, including the prime actors here, the brothers and the other actors on the ground, can really give predictions even for the short-term future. We just don't even know in Egypt when are going to be elections. They are supposed to take place in April now. It's unclear. So it's a very complex dynamic right now. The brothers would like, when interviewed, they like to make the analogy with the Turkish model, where there's a slow Islamization of society, yet done completely through the democratic process. Although some would differ with that, because the way the Turkish government has cracked down on both the military and the press. I think Turkey ranks one of the top positions when it comes to the number of journalists detained. Turkey is hardly one of the best places to be a journalist. But the idea is that the AKP would be the model. I find myself to be quite skeptical about it, the application of the Turkish model, particularly in Egypt, maybe a bit less in Tunisia, but particularly in Egypt is quite difficult, because in Turkey, the elements of the state and of society that are there to resist the push for Islamization are so much stronger. The concept of secularism and democracy, although slightly flawed, are so much more ingrained than what they are in Egypt, that I think there's no way that the Brotherhood will face the same obstacles that the AKP has faced. Now also, Islamist movements are not all the same, and the AKP has undergone 10-15 years ago, before really reaching power, an internal change, and was still maintaining very strong Islamist tendencies. It has gone through a certain reformation, internal reformation, has broken with some of the most radical elements of Turkish Islamism from the Erbakan side of Turkish Islamism, and has modernized itself. It's still problematic from many perspectives, but the kind of ideology, internally and externally expressed by the AKP, is light year away from what the narrative that comes from the Egyptian Brotherhood, the kind of statements that we hear from the Brotherhood on a variety of controversial issues, from the role of women to the role of democracy to, well, I guess in Israel it's not a big of a difference, but on a variety of issues is quite different. So I'm quite skeptical on that. I find myself to be a bit more optimistic when thinking about the comparison. The other big comparison that is made, the opposite side of the spectrum, is Iran, and I also find myself to be with a good chance of being proven wrong, of course. I don't see the analogy, and I see that for a variety of reasons, it is not going to necessarily go in that direction, because of the role of the military, because of still the role of civic society, of the deep state, and I think for the influence of outside forces, Western governments, that less powerful as they are, they're still going to some degree exert some influence to prevent that process from happening. Something in between. I think it's very difficult to say what exactly that something in between would look like.
I'll just add something quick. Okay. Well, it's a safe bet that whatever emerges in these countries will be something new, presumably some hybrid of elements elsewhere in the region. My mom used to read the coffee grounds when I was a little kid, and rather than read coffee grounds, I'd like to offer a couple of factors, a couple of pivots on which outcomes will depend. One of them is the difference in terms of the fabric of society from one country to the next, and the state of civil society. As I mentioned earlier, the Al-Mesbar Center, and so many of you feel that civil society is a prerequisite to a sustainable democracy. And so the question is, where are there civil society institutions? And where there aren't, will they be built? Will the West invest the formidable resources that will not come from any other part of the world in constructing and supporting civil society ventures in Egypt? This is a very important factor on which the future of Egypt may well rest. In Tunisia, there is a type of civil society institution that is very strong, and it is the labor movement. The labor movement might well have won the elections had it fielded, had the UGTT, which is the AFL-CIO of Tunisia, fielded a candidate. Instead, they declined to do so, and about 20 different parties, no one had ever heard of because they were brand new, came off as splinters of the labor movement, and together they would have beaten Ennahda. So Tunisia is a place where there is great strength to the opposition, and it is conceivable that they could unseat Ennahda in the elections because they have organizational discipline and enormous support. In Syria, I think one of the questions is cantonization. Syria is a multi-sectarian country. It is a country that is already, in practice, divided among different militias. There is a question of whether there will be an Alawite enclave that will enable the regime to fall without the Alawites facing a massacre. It is conceivable that there will be jihadist enclaves and other enclaves of a different stripe. And so cantonization is something to watch. And there's where the introduction of more American support and involvement on the ground may help foster greater unity in terms of the government that follows.
I'll just mention one other thing on the idea of a Turkish model being applicable to places like Egypt. The head of the AKP and the Prime Minister of Turkey, Erdogan, visited Egypt a few months ago, and he insisted, he said, hey, what you need in Egypt is a secular state. And the Egyptian Muslim Brotherhood completely rejected that. So on that happy note, I will thank you all for coming on behalf of the Reserve Officer Association, FPRI, and Al-Mesbar. It's been a fascinating talk, and we've learned some very interesting things. And please go to either FPRI's website or Al-Mesbar's website to download this ebook. It will be worth your time. Thank you very much.